Thanks, everyone. I'll talk a little bit about TiE as I start getting through the slides. So, just a little bit about background about myself. I know you see a lot of logos here, but the idea here is to get across that I have kind of worked across many different roles and many kinds of organizations. Been a strategy consultant with companies like Accenture, KPMG, a few startups. Mentored the management teams or the C-suites of many, many companies, large and small, including 6 Fortune 100 companies. Did a lot of pioneering work in the wireless industry. I think most of you, especially the students, may be too young to even have been around when some of this work happened. But things like bringing the first internet phone to market, and actually inventing the flat rate plan, that we all take for granted today. I'm one of the three people who kind of came up with that plan. Done my share of startups. So in fact, my first taste of it was for a client. I actually came up with the idea, wrote the business plan, pitched it to a client, and they said, "Oh, we love it. Go ahead and start it as a business unit for them." And Converge is a $3 billion public company. I've done a number of startups along the way, but today I kind of have my fingers in many pies, local businesses. So one, in fact, is in real estate. We're opening up our first one, which is right there at the University of Houston. It is a fully furnished studio accommodation, but 240 units, should open in a couple of weeks. On the side, I own a whole chain of franchise daycares. I spent a lot of my time today building out this company called Gravity Energy, which is the fastest growing EV charging infrastructure operator in Texas. And we've moved into a new phase now. It's becoming also a manufacturer. So we're likely the only manufacturer in the whole country that manufactures, installs, and operates EV charging infrastructure. And I also invest, as you can expect. So not only do I lead the Chicago Booth Business School Angels Network for Texas, but I also kind of co-lead TiE Houston Angels investments around here. Just a quick word about TiE Houston. TiE is the world's largest entrepreneurship organization. We've got about 50 or 60 chapters around the world. And most of us who are charter members either come out of industry as uh, either senior executives from the industry, or investors, or entrepreneurs. So to be a charter member, one has to actually be invited to join. But we spend a lot of our time mentoring and nurturing entrepreneurship and helping raise funds and working with entrepreneurs to help them take their companies from a startup to the next level. Okay, so when I talk today, I'll be talking wearing multiple hats, having either been an entrepreneur, been an advisor to dozens and dozens of startups, but also more importantly, as an investor in companies, because at the end of the day, that's a lot of what you're going to be working on going forward. Right? So most of you on the call today have a great idea, or at least you think you have a great idea, or you've invented something, right? And I'd be surprised and concerned if you haven't thought about the great riches you can expect or hope to make, right? Some people think in millions or tens of millions. Some people are already thinking in terms of billions. The key thing to be careful of is that you still haven't gotten there, right? And to recognize that to get from your idea or your product to those great riches, one actually has to cross this massive chasm. And having dealt with a number of you know technical inventors over the decades I've been doing this, it's amazing how few often recognize that they have this massive chasm that needs to be crossed. And what is that chasm, right? I mean, when you think about it, it's basically this idea of having to put a business around your product. And what's scary is that uh, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of technical inventors I talk to, when I say, hey, you've barely cracked 2% of the problem, you can physically see their shoulders drop. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? I've worked my butt off for the last 8 years inventing this, working day and night in a lab. I've come up with this genius product, and you're trying to tell me we have barely scratched the surface. And the truth of the reality is that that is the case. Um, very often you've only really scratched the surface. And the reason I say scratch the surface is because to get from that idea to those great riches, one actually has to put this whole business around them, right? And so Obviously, the next question is, how do you get started, right? And the first thing you have to do is really understand where are you in in the evolution of your product. Are you basically still in the lab where you're proof of concept, when you're barely, even gotten started? Or do you have a working prototype that now has to be taken out into the real world, into the field and tried out, right? Because just because something works in the lab, it doesn't mean it's going to work in the real environment. I mean, take a look at pharmaceutical drugs, right? How many of them may work in the lab? How many of them may work in a rat or a pig, but may fail when you start taking it out to human trials or even before that, right? And so getting out in the real world environment is not easy. What's even more difficult or equally difficult is that many of our anchor industries in Houston, such as oil and gas and healthcare and water and the likes, or energy related, we are dealing with very, very conservative industries. And by nature of these industries being extremely conservative, they are very risk averse, right? So it's not unusual for entrepreneurs, especially in oil and gas, to try almost 2 to 3 years before they can get someone to take a chance on them and provide them with an environment to do a pilot test. And, a very common response is, I love your product and I really like you, but you know what? Go do it somewhere else. And when you get it working somewhere else, you come back to me. Right? That's the sad nature of of the industries in our own backyard. Now let's assume you've been fortunate enough to get this working in the field and you've proven it in the field. Now the next stage is, how are you going to commercialize this? How are you going to ramp up this whole production? And when is ready for this commercialization, now that's when the really hard work begins, right? This is when the rubber meets the road, right? And as I say here, I've got a whole bunch of these sayings, so just bear with me. Some of them may actually be funny. Most of them aren't, I find, but I'm just full of these, right? So, okay. So what's the first thing you need to do as you think about your commercialization journey, right? Normally, I'd throw this out to an audience and ask this question, but I'm going to make these kind of rhetorical kind of questions, right? And the first thing you do, obviously, is write a business plan. What's really surprising? What's really surprising is that tons and tons of entrepreneurs I deal with think I'm crazy when you say how to write a business plan, because they think, hey, it's all in my head. I know what I need to do, right? And the fact is that, in my observation, one of the biggest reasons businesses fail is because they did not bother to write a business plan and work to a plan. When you're doing things in the lab, you're developing a plan, right? You're not just going and, hey, let me pour this in or let me connect this over here and figure out what the hell is going on. I mean, you actually come up with a plan of what you want to do. It's no different when you're building a business, right? Write a business plan. The key question I ask is, why would you write a business plan? And frankly, there are many reasons why you do that, right? First thing you want to do is maybe on the back of an envelope, figure out, is this thing actually going to make some money? Right? Because you're starting a business, you got to make some money at some point, or you got to create some value. Maybe you're starting a business to create social value rather than make money, right? But you got to figure out what is the value you're going to deliver. Importantly, you want to get it down on paper and understand what it is exactly you want to do. It's amazing how many management teams you deal with where they haven't bothered to put this down on paper. And everyone on the team has a different idea as to what the company needs to be or the direction the company needs to go in. I think common sense will tell you that ain't going to fly, where everybody's working towards in a different direction. At the end of the day, you want to put down pen to paper, you want to quantify how much it's going to take because you have to figure out how much funding you need. But most importantly, you have to tell this story to investors to invest in you, right? Because I haven't come across a business, unless you're independently wealthy and you're going to fund this whole thing yourself. I haven't come across a business that did not have to go raise funding at some point in its evolution from investors, right? So, first thing we have to do is understand the kind of investors that exist out there, right? So, I've kind of broken them out into three buckets: private, corporate, and public. When it comes to private, you've got what I call equity investors. These are people who are going to invest in you, but they're going to take a stake in your company. Remember, when they take a stake in the company, it is no longer your company. It is yours and the other shareholders' company. Even if you own the majority of the company, recognize and respect the fact that you have other people who also may own a small stake in the company. And then, of course, you have donors, right? I'll come back to the donors, but let's talk about equity investors. And this is really four stages that people normally go through, right? So when you're a raw startup, when you have an idea, you're really going to friends and family. Actually, we normally say it's the three F's, right? Friends, families, and fools. And you're going to them and saying, hey, I need 10,000, I need 25,000. Typically, you can go up to about 200,000, begging and asking people for money. Once you've got that money, then you have got a little more traction. You want to build yourself up to the next level. You go to what we call angel investors. These are the investors like myself, like Ravi, like Willie. Angel investors, want to be a little more involved in a company. They bring some expertise. These are people who typically go to raise anywhere from 200,000 to about 1 million. As you grow, you now start hitting up venture funds, also sometimes referred to as vulture capitalists, because they're going to try and take their pound of flesh. And if you get to a point where you need a lot of money and much larger funding, you go to private equity people. But venture capitalists bring a lot of value. They bring a lot of credibility to your team. It's important to not just take money from anybody, but you want to look for smart money. Venture capitalists and angel investors who are going to bring some value to your company, help you open doors, or help augment your management team and things like that. When it comes to donors, there are certain business opportunities where you can go to a donor like a wealthy individual. For example, you start a business in the healthcare space and you go to a donor who has either had to deal with maybe a rare disease in that space personally or a family situation, and they'd be more than happy sometimes to write you a check because they believe in that cause. This happens a lot in non-profit kind of business opportunities, like in educational, or you want to start something that is targeting you know villages in Africa or some third world country, right? And the beauty of those donations is that they are not looking to take an equity stake in your company, so they're not diluting the value of the company. The next category are corporate investors. These are venture funds owned by large corporations. In our own backyard in Houston, we have companies like Shell Technology Ventures, which, as you can expect, is backed by Shell Oil. You've got Chevron Ventures, Aramco Ventures. So you have a lot of these corporate, and on the tech side, Intel Capital is a big one. And these companies tend to be more strategic investors. They are not necessarily looking for a big return on their investment. They are looking more to get early access and sometimes even privileged access or priority access to technology that they feel and believe will have tremendous value to their parent company. Right? So again, that's smart money that tends to be not as diluting and as cutthroat as venture capital, but it is equity that actually buys you a fair amount of credibility and hopefully access to their parent company for a test or something. Another kind of financing is project financing that people rarely use. Right? Project financing is, you've got to maybe develop a piece of software, you've got to develop a prototype, and you can go to a big company and say, hey, you know what? I can develop this. It will cost me about $200,000, $300,000, but if you give me $50,000 or $100,000, I can get a prototype to you, or I can do it in a consulting manner for your company, and maybe give you some preferential treatment or some discounted pricing in the future. And I'll give you a perfect example. So many years ago, when I worked for AT&T Wireless, I was doing a lot of pioneering work in the telecom space, and I saw the opportunity or the vision that wireless emails on phones was going to be part of the future. And I went up to our headquarters, I went to the executives, and I got beaten down. I got like, this is impossible to get this done. Nobody believed in this, right? And I went to Microsoft that had Exchange, and they thought I was, a joke. So I found a company, and even though I was a mid-level manager, I managed to pony up 50,000 from my own budget and got this company to develop middleware and got them to build a software product that took Novell's group-wise. Again, many of you are not old enough to know, but in those days, Novell's group-wise email was actually bigger than Microsoft Exchange, and got them to build a middleware that actually took group-wise wireless. And that got basically Lotus Notes and Microsoft shamed into going wireless. And that's how it really started, right? I was just a mid-level manager who was able to pull the project financing on my own budget to get this done. So you find someone like me, and you can always find some money to get a project done like that. And then finally, you've got public sources. You've got the government, and I'm sure a lot of you at the university are quite familiar with this, getting grants from the federal government, sometimes even from state governments. And the beauty about federal financing or state financing, government financing, is that it's basically free money. It is money you take to do your development, and it is money that doesn't dilute your shareholder equity. And then finally, you've got crowdfunding. I kind of put this in the public domain because you are going to the public market through a crowdfunding platform to go and raise maybe anywhere from 20,000 to a couple of $100,000. And these are being raised from individuals in small crowdfunding, small amounts to fund your company. These are people who would not qualify as angel investors according to the SEC. Right now, we're seeing a huge amount of crowdfunding being done to fund former presidents' lawsuits. Right? You look at those lawsuits right now. All that money is being raised through crowdfunding, with people donating 50, 100, or $25 at a time, and tens of millions of dollars are being raised in that manner. Okay, so these are the kinds of investors you'll be targeting, and each of them will be looking at you with a slightly different lens. Now, you do need to have some standard components in your business plan, but all these investors, especially the ones who are looking to make a profit, are looking to invest in a company that has a good probability of success. So they're going to look at you and say, okay, is this product really going to sell? Are these people really the ones who are going to make it happen? What is the probability that there's going to be market acceptance of this product and be able to build traction? My money that I invest in this company is going to be successful, right? So the question is, what are they really looking for in your venture? Think about your probability of success down the road. And what do you got to do, right? You have to basically put together your business plan. So what needs to go into your business plan? And what needs to go into this business plan is this laundry list of things. Now, does it mean that you have to do everything really thoroughly in this? Does this mean you have to write a massive document? No, the answer is no. I mean, nobody out there is going to read a 50, even 20-page Word document. This is literally 1 or 2 slides per topic. Now, you have to think a lot of this through, and you may put a lot of the nitty-gritty or the details of supporting a number of these slides in your backup, right? In your appendix, that number 14 over there on that list. But the key thing is you have to put your presentation together in a slide format that works well most of the time. But you have to make it interesting, and you have to make it meaningful with as little information. And I was told a very interesting secret many years ago that venture capitalists do not have much of an attention span. So you never want to have more than 3 bullet points on a page. I like to think they've evolved a little bit since then, but you don't want to have a lot of words or a lot of sentences on a page because they have very limited attention span. Okay, so let's dig into this. But before I do that, is it okay to ask if there are any questions, Ravi?
Absolutely. In fact, folks, you feel free to use chat or raise your hand. Your mics are unmuted. So if there's any questions at this point, feel free to ask. Hubert, I will share that as I'm seeing people's names and their team names, I am assigning them new names that have the team number. So if you see your name being rechanged, don't worry. It's all part of the process. If there's any questions, do ask Hubert at this point. Otherwise, Hubert, I'm not seeing any hands up or anything on my
Okay.
end right now.
I'm just hoping that people are awake still. Okay, so moving on into this slide, into this list. So here's the thing, right? You start off with laying out your problem. Interestingly, in my experience, this is one of the most complicated and difficult slides to put together, right? Because you're trying to very succinctly get across and grab someone's attention. And, oh my goodness, this thing is like, things are really bad, in the market that I'm going to try and address, right? And the challenge is that is that you're trying to get across the urgency of the market need or the business need or the technical need to a person who doesn't necessarily have the knowledge or the technical expertise to comprehend the problem. And for example, if you're presenting a very technical problem to another technical person in your industry, you can say, listen, XYZ is causing ABC. And the other person says, oh my goodness, are you serious? Oh my, yeah, I fully understand that is a massive problem. How are we going to fix it? But if you went and said ABC is causing, XYZ problem in our industry to your average investor who doesn't have that experience, they're going to say, what? Right? So the onus falls upon you to make it as simple as possible to get the story across to them. Again, in a couple of sentences and some pretty pictures, right? So lay out a cause and effect and say, here's what's happening, and that is causing these problems. You want to boil it down to one or two problems, right? And the numbers go a long way in presenting a very nice story. Let me give you an example over here. So you take a look at this slide, and it's like, I know what this company does, and even when I read this page, I have no freaking clue what the problem is. Right? This company has a whole bunch of stuff on this page, and they say, here's slide number one of our problem, here's slide number two for our problem. And an investor is going and saying, my God, I mean, can you make this a little simpler? Right? So we tried to work with these guys and came up with this. Right? If you read this, you understand that this is in the music industry. This is in supply chain of how royalties are presented or collected and distributed, and it's very inefficient. Oh, okay. You're telling me about inefficiency of how royalties are collected and distributed in the music industry. And it's a massive, massive problem. I'm seeing some huge numbers over there. Okay, so my next question is, where is this inefficiency? And that's when you can maybe potentially go back to the slides. Here's where it is. Don't look at the details in that green box. Basically, all that green box and the red box, that's where you have the inefficiency that's causing these problems. Great. You know what? We've got 10 or 20 minutes, so let's not belabor this. We'll come back to this at a later point. Right. So we've got the problem, got the attention. Now, how am I going to fix this problem? How am I, with my business or my company or my technology, going to address this problem? And you got to keep it succinct at a high level. But you want to address, what is your magic sauce? Why are people going to buy your product and pay you money for it? Here's the thing you have to keep in mind. However smart you may think your product is, however clever you think your invention is, there is a 98% probability someone else has also been tackling or someone's actually done something similar. And I can tell you, when you go and talk to investors, there's 5 other people who've approached them with a similar problem and maybe a slightly different approach to solving that problem. Remember, there's many different ways to skin a cat. Take, for example, what happened to me yesterday. I'm walking into the grocery store. I get a call from another entrepreneur whose company we'd invested in and said, hey, Hubert, I've been working and mentoring this company and they want to come to you guys for investment. I said, okay, great. What does the company do? Oh, they got a great product. They've invented a smoothie vending machine. I said, yep, I've seen how much I pay for smoothies. So that's wonderful. But let me tell you, in the last 6 months, you're the fifth guy to come to me with a business plan for a smoothie vending machine. I know there is a need for them, but coming up with that machine is not what's going to convince me to invest in the company. I need to know who they're going to distribute it to. How are they going to replenish the materials in that smoothie machine? How much is it going to cost to produce a smoothie, and how much do they think they can charge for it? Because I see $8 for a smoothie. Guess what? I'm not a poor man, but even I would think not twice, but maybe 3 times before I would spend $8 on a smoothie, right? So especially when I can get a nice Chick-fil-A sandwich for $6 or Popeye's chicken sandwich for $4.99, right? So the thing is, uh, you have to realize that however smart your idea may be, it it's not the first time, most probably, that the investors are hearing about it. So you really have to catch their attention and tell them and show them why you are better than somebody else out there. But at this stage, those first 3 minutes or 4 minutes are when you're going to have grab their attention. And if you do not grab the excitement and attention at this point, kind of mentally, the investor's checked out. They'll go through the motions of listening to your pitch and they'll say, thank you, we'll get back to you. And when they say, thank you, we'll get back to you, that means they're not interested. Okay. So the this getting this right is not easy. And the way you get it right is by constantly discussing it and socializing with other people who may not have familiarity with the business to get them to tell you what give them your feedback to sharpen this story. And then, of course, the next stage is to get to your product roadmap to tell you, okay, we're in the lab or we've got this prototype, and here is how we see the product evolving, especially with the money you give us. We'll take our product from X, from A to B, and then we'll go and raise additional fundings to go from B to C. But at each stage, here is what we expect to accomplish uh, with the product prototypes, right? My EV charging business, we're doing presentations right now, and this is a very simple roadmap as to how a product is going to evolve. Says it all. Okay. So you've talked about the problem, the solution, the roadmap. Now, the next few components don't necessarily have to be in this order. And in fact, sometimes you can actually tackle a couple of these on one slide. So, for example, the competition, uh, your competition and your uh, uh, its solution sometimes can be put in with the competition. You can say, here is our solution, and here's why we're different and special from our competitors, right? But when it comes to your competitors, it just blows my mind how many people will come up and say, oh, we don't have any competition. We're so special, we're so unique, we don't have any competition. I can tell you from experience that when you say something like that, especially with VCs and private equity people, they kind of check out at that point. Their takeaway is this team or this entrepreneur has not given enough thought to understanding the market they're playing in. Okay, you may have competitors in left field come out of nowhere, but more importantly, when you map out your competitors and understand them thoroughly, not only does it help you get better and know the threshold you have to cross to succeed in the market, but it makes you very smart or much smarter than the, your competition when you talk to investors. And I'll give you an example like this, right? Just imagine you're presenting to an investor and they say, hey, what about this company? Now, if you were to say, I haven't heard about them, you kind of lose a little credibility. If you were to say, yes, I know about them, and here is why we think we are better than they are, or they are better than we are in this area, but in these other things, this is how we do things a lot better, how we tackle the market differently. Then you come across as somebody who understands the market. You come across as somebody who is thorough but has credibility in what they're talking about. Right? So it's really, really important to do that. And it's not complicated. You boil it down to one slide, come up with a 2 by 2 matrix or present it in a tabular form like this. It basically says, this is what we look like versus our competitors. Now, I'm not a big fan of showing green check marks across the board. Okay. I think you'll have more credibility if you were to identify some areas where you're not as good as the competitors. But then you can say, listen, we're not as good as the competitors, but it's not such a big deal breaker, or we are working towards it in our next iteration. Right? But it's important to present categories that reflect not what you think is important, but what you think the market considers important. Okay. Okay. So then let's talk about um, the market opportunity. It's important while you're doing your research on your competitors to also understand the market you're playing in. And there's in this market, in today's world, you get flooded with content and information. It's critical to pick the few charts and diagrams that really put together the market you're playing in, right? And generally, you want to be playing in a market that's about $1 billion in size, growing at a steady clip. Unless you're playing in a very niche market where you say, hey, there are only two players, here's what they're doing, and here's why we think we can come in there and grab a lot of share and build a nice revenue stream. And you don't have to tackle it, but tackle $1 billion market, but there's huge barriers to entry for someone else to come in. So even if we were to enter the market, it may be difficult for others to enter. But there's plenty of data sources out there. In my experience, uh, some of the best reports are what the big Wall Street investment banks do on an industry or a company, where they may do 100 or 200-page report that does a very, very thorough categorization of the industry, a very, very thorough research and opinions that you can leverage, and quoting studies done by an investment bank or an industry analyst or by a major consultancy like a McKinsey or a BCG has a lot of credibility, right? Um, you're fortunate that at a university you have free access at your library or online to many of these databases like Morningstar and Investex that to people on the outside it cost a lot, thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. So leverage that access through your university systems and get that information. It's not complicated to find it and to sift through it and then use that in making your case. And of course, nothing uh, nothing counts as much as actually getting primary research. Hey, we went and we talked to 200 potential customers, and this is the data they're giving us. We've compiled it, and we're getting a very positive response that they would actually be very interested in talking to us when we bring our product to market. Okay, here's an example of a social media company presenting its target market. Right, so yes, we can go after billions of users. I think Meta or Facebook said they have now got 3 billion accounts. So we know the addressable market is 8 billion people eventually in the world, but you know, uh, you bring it down to something that makes sense that you're actually going to target at an early stage. Okay, so you've talked about the product, you've talked about your roadmap. I mean, your problem solution roadmap. You've talked about uh, your market and the opportunity. Now, where are you with your business? Again, this is not a complicated slide. You're basically going to say we have three people on board, we have a product that's ready to go into the field, or we've been talking to these four big companies. One of them is interested in going forward, but we need, $50,000 to, fabricate this prototype to take to them or bring to them. Few things like that, right? And it doesn't have to be complicated. This is what you provide. It's just four or five little buckets of information you may put out there. Now, this is one of the most critical slides. I'm going to spend a little time on this slide. The decision to eventually invest in your company is based on how the investors feel about you. Big private equity investors have told me at 70% of their decision to invest in the company is really based on the caliber of the management team, especially bigger companies, you know, bigger investments. But even when it comes to smaller investments, I would say on average it's about half. But what are they typically looking for, right? In a very early stage startup, especially when the truth is most of you coming out of a university have never really done this before, right? And that's the reality. I'm sure there are exceptions, but most of you have never done this before. Uh, Little sidebar. I remember last year I was listening to a presentation of this professor from one of these top universities, and straight away off the bat, he's showing me a video of two rats, two mice he had treated. No, one he had not treated, the other one he had treated. Say, see this mouse, I treated this way, and its legs are moving so beautifully compared to the other one whose legs are dragging on the ground. I'm thinking, okay, but you want $7 million for this? So I said, Professor, have you done a company like this before? He says, Hubert, my first two companies have already been acquired. My third one's in partnership with Bristol Myers, and this is my fifth company. So yeah, I have a little bit of knowledge. As you can imagine, the face became about to smell. But you know, That's not the norm, right? The norm is that you're very often dealing with entrepreneurs who have never been there, never done that before. And at the end of the day, that is what you have to contend with, right? As an entrepreneur, you have to convince the investor that they need to give you money, even though your experience is quite limited. And you have to show them how you're going to learn from that. But also remember, however smart you may be and you want to figure it out, the figuring out takes time and money. And the investor is thinking, is this company going to run out of money, out of my money, before this guy figures it out? Or are they going to be smart enough to be able to leverage that money and find the right resources to help them get to the next level? Again, let me give you two different stories here. So many years ago, when I first moved to Houston, I was mentoring a really super hard business intelligence software CEO. And he was one guy with uh, couple of salespeople and an offshore-based development company. And the product was phenomenal. I mean, it was making waves, it was making news, which was very unusual. But at the same time, he had never been able to move from trials to a kind of a commercial contract. So he'd been chugging along at about $200,000 a year. So it's like trivial for a hot software company. And all of a sudden, he gets approached to be bought out at $30 million. Keep in mind, 19 years ago, 18 years ago, 30 million, 30 million is a lot of money today, but there was a lot more then, right? And he said, no, I'm not going to sell. I said, why not? He says, because I think this company is worth 300 million. I said, you're absolutely right. Your company can be worth 300 million if you're doing 15 to 20 million dollars a year in revenue. But right now, you've been just chugging along at 100 to 200,000. You've never demonstrated your ability after all these years to be able to go over that $200,000. So I said, 30 million is a really good number for a $200,000 company. And he said, well, Bill Gates didn't have a degree and built Microsoft, and Michael Dell didn't get his degree and he built Dell. So I like to think I'm smarter than those guys. I said, you're smart. Absolutely. But you're going to regret this. And he turned down the offer. And then literally almost 10 years to the day, he calls me up and he says, hey, do you think you can get me 10 million for my company? And I took a look and I said, you'd be lucky to get three, right? That's one end. The other example is Gravity, right? The two founders, very techie guys, they actually have about 20 years in the industry. Um, but they came to me at one point and said, listen, we can run this, and chug along, but we really have to accelerate this company. And for us to do that, we have to go raise funding. And for us to raise funding, no investor is going to invest in us as guys. We have to go find the right CEO to do this because we need to raise 10 million. And with the right CEO, investors will be more comfortable giving us that money. And that's what the company is doing. I mean, these guys were uh, smart enough to recognize that at some point, when they had to ramp up, they were more concerned about their baby being successful rather than their egos get in the way. Right? Now, I'm not saying that that is the norm. I'm not saying that has to be done, but these are things to think about. These are things to consider at some stage as your company grows and as you evolve. Right. Uh, so, how do you, at an early stage, compensate for this inexperience? And the way you do that is by working with experienced people, working with people who have been there, done that, and importantly, heeding that advice. The company we had invested in about 2 years ago that finally closed its doors 2 months ago. We all lost our money. The CEO called me and said, oh, I'd like to have a meeting with you to discuss uh, the feedback. And I was like livid, right? And I said, what feedback more do you want? I mean, every single angel investor you talk to, every entrepreneur you talk to, everyone you talk to who ended up not investing, you told you the very same thing you needed to focus on and do, and you refused to accept it. That was your downfall, right? So he had access to all these beautiful resources that told him what he needed to do, but he just wasn't willing to accept it. And guess what? Sometimes you can be like Elon Musk and become Elon Musk, the richest man in the world. But there's only one Elon Musk. There are a million other people who thought they were Elon Musk and didn't have to go on that path, right? So again, I know this may not sound very exciting, but I'm telling you from decades of experience of seeing this over and over to keep these things at the back of your mind as you grow your business. And at some point, you'll say, you know, that guy Hubert, he was saying this. Maybe there's some sense in what he said, right? So, okay, the go-to-market. I'm going to run through these next few slides, because we're kind of running out of
Hubert,
time.
a great summary. This is Zafar Kamal. Just quickly, I think on that previous slide, the way I tell people on that one is make sure you have a board of advisors and make sure you're showing your executive team and you have some
Yes,
resumes up there in summary. So I think you gave some really great examples, but I think for the team here, they need to be able to show who's advising them, like as a board, quote unquote, and who's their executive team or who's their leadership team. So
who
I
is the
think,
key? Yeah.
yeah.
But
Anyway, please go ahead.
also keep in mind when you're bringing in resources, if you're tapping into help from your fellow students at the business school, keep in mind even they, in most cases, have never been there, done that, right? Most of them who are in business school may have achieved mid-management level, if at most. Usually, it's not even that.
Yeah.
So keep in mind that even they have never been at the executive level, because at the executive level, people tend to think and function very differently. But importantly, also bring a lot different level of credibility to the investors. So it doesn't mean you need to do that, but recognize at some point, even they may not be, their experience may not be enough to take the company to the next level. Thanks for that. Okay, so the go-to market, let's talk about this very quickly. The question you think about is, how am I going to win my customers? Put a little bit of thought behind that. How are we going to especially get our initial pilots? And what are we going to do in terms of taking our pilots to actual commercial sales? Uh, for now, I'm going to say let's not spend a lot of time talking about this, okay? Because that's where, the mentors can come in and help you do this and figure this out in a more succinct manner. Think about how are you going to make money doing this? Remember, when I first broached the topic of doing your business plan, the question you'd ask is, or figure out is, how are you going to make money? Is this thing going to make money? And if it's going to make money, you have to ask yourself, how am I going to charge people for it? Am I going to do it as a one-time fee or or a project? Or is this going to be a model that does a recurring revenue? Right? Different models, different ways you make money, uh, implications on your cash flow requirements, implications on a customer's ability to pay for it. You know, uh, come back to my charging company, right? People say, how much is this going to cost me? Believe me, we go to a big mall company. Oh, it's going to cost you 75,000. Now, when the guy's putting in $100 million mall, 75,000 ain't going to break his back. Okay. And the response comes back with, hey, how much will you charge me if I lease this from you? And believe me, the lease terms are like insanely lucrative in the long term for us, right? You can almost charge them 30% interest on it. And the guy says, yeah, I prefer that and pay you a monthly amount, right? My business model just went up. That's fantastic, right? So give some thought to that, because that then feeds into your financial model. It's rudimentary. At an early stage, I can assure you, very few investors are going to hold you to it. But what they want to see and make sure, especially when you look at your model for the first year or two, work it out on a monthly basis and do not be overly conservative. The reason I'm saying that is when you're an entrepreneur, you're most probably not even working on a salary and you're doing things on a shoestring budget. But as you start getting into the real world and getting out of the university into companies and businesses, there are expenses you will incur that you have never thought about. There are people you're going to have to bring on board, you're going to have to pay salaries to. There are investments you're going to have to make. All of that adds up. You know, most entrepreneurs will come in and say, I need $1 million. And we said, okay, let's take a look at your financial model because our gut's telling us you need 3. And by the time we're done, the number is closer to 3. And when you ask for 3, or when you need 3, you go ask for 4. or 5, because most VCs will say, yep, you know what? I can commit 5, but I ain't giving you 5 up front. I'm going to give you $1 million. And when you make these XYZ milestones, I'll give you your next $1 million. Right. And that's kind of how it works. So it's very critical to understand your cash requirements and what you're going to achieve with that level of cash, that you can demonstrate to the investors that you have a fairly decent idea about getting the company to the next level. Okay. Okay. And that then brings us to what kind of funding you need. Now, you generally, are looking to, either provide a convertible note or a safe note, which basically says, I'm going to basically raise debt from you. And, at certain milestones, that debt will convert into equity. A lot of investors prefer to do debt. The reason they like debt is because if the company goes under, debt gets first rights to the assets of the company over equity. But what you're going to have to do is tell them, listen, you can invest in my company, and there is a valuation amount that you will be, this company is worth 3 million or 4 million. So at some point when your debt converts to equity, that is the maximum value it will convert to. I won't go into these details. We can talk about it later on. The other option is to do straight equity. Hey, you put money into my company and you're going to get shares in it instantly. And right now our company, we valued at 3 million. And if you put in $1 million, the company now becomes post-money valuation of 4 million. Simple math. Right? And then a little bit of snippet saying if you've raised any funds to date, put that down there. And funds can be either funds from private investors or it could be grants. Investors love to see grants. And the reason love to see grants is because, you spent a lot of government money developing your product, so I don't have to give you the money to do that. Right? Now, of course, if you took a lot of government money and achieved very little, that's a red flag too, right? So it's kind of, you got to be careful about that. And then at a high level, how are you going to use the funds? So, well, we're going to use 60% for R&D, 20% for, sales and marketing, and the rest for, XYZ capability or needs. Right? Put it on, it's a very simple pie graph. You can do that. And then paint a picture. Paint a picture as to what could happen, right? So the easiest way to present this is to show them competitive valuations. That's where your research comes in. Either you go and look at how public companies in the space are being valued, or how private companies in the space have raised funding. You got to go and do a little bit of research over there and find companies in your space that have already raised funds, how much they raised, under what terms they raised them, what kind of valuation they had. If I come back again to my EV charging company as an example, we go and we show how much our competitors like ChargePoint and EVgo and all are being traded in the stock market, and say, hey, each charging port they put out there is basically an average worth so much. Oh, okay. So how many charging ports you got? Oh, we got so many hundred. So you multiply that by a range of, so much to so much. That's how much we think you are worth. And they say, okay, it's got some credibility over there, but now let's negotiate, right? They always negotiate. There's a reason they're called vulture capitalists, right? They always want the best deal. Okay. So, and then you want to have a little bit of a summary. Doesn't matter so much. By then you either grab their attention or you lost them. And then, all your more detailed research, put them into slides and backup, because what happens is you get to a point where it's Q&A. Oh, so what about this? Oh, hold on a second. I have a slide. Let me pull it up from my appendix and show it to you, right? And that all buys credibility. Not only helps bulletproof your business plan, but buys credibility with the investors. And the ideal situation you want to have is like what I've been having lately. If a VC is not, or any investor is not interested in business, they'll say, thank you, we'll think about it and get back to you. That is not the best response. Okay. That means, okay, you know what, we're done. On the other hand, if they say, oh, that's fantastic, let's set up a follow-on meeting, I'm going to send you an NDA, or please send me your P&L or your pro forma, that was a very, very good meeting. And they're seriously considering, the next stage, because they are listening to dozens and dozens of plans or reading through dozens of plans a week. So, they are not going to spend time re-looking at you unless there was some seriousness over there. So, parting gems from this presentation. How are we doing on time? Okay, I think we're okay, right, on time.
Yeah,
So
4:30.
present with energy and conviction, right? I like to think I have a decent amount of energy. Just imagine if I just droned on softly, only half, right now I only got half of you asleep. If I've been just droning on, I'm sure all of you would be asleep, right? So energy, conviction. I have seen the worst business plans get funded in 20 minutes because of the energy and enthusiasm of the investors, right? Tell a story. Don't get hobbled by a slide. Your slides are just a crutch or just, prop. Tell your story. Tell your personal experience as to what drove you to invent what you're inventing and why you want to build it as a business. You will relate to it better. The people listening to your story will relate to it better. It's really, really critical to do that. Fact is that 90% of inventions or 90% of entrepreneurs that invented something invented it because of a personal issue or need they had in their lives. The other thing, don't try and do it alone. Okay? However smart you may be, however clever you may be, don't try and figure it all out yourself. You don't know everything, and be smart enough to recognize you don't know everything. Get the help you need. Also, as I said just a few minutes ago, most of you have never built a business or a company before. So when you're getting help from investors and mentors, leverage it. Take that help. And as I also said, when you bring on investors, it's no longer just your company, maybe your baby, but it's no longer your company. Recognize that it is your collective company, and learn to respect the investors in your company. It amazes me how many times entrepreneurs who take on a lot of shareholders don't remember that. They don't recognize that fact. Right? Now, critical. Many people work in an environment where secrecy is really important. I see that a lot in academia, right? And that's critical. But when it comes to a business, actually, I encourage people to socialize your business or your idea. Because what you invented took a lot of time and effort, not like somebody else can just come up with it overnight. So if you go and socialize your idea with people who can provide you with feedback and guidance for a couple of weeks, couple of months, I can assure you the competition is not going to catch up with you in that much time. Right? Now, there are certain companies where you really have to be secretive. I connected with an old high school and college classmate. He's currently working for a company that's so secretive. He could only tell me the industry they're working in. And he tells me they've raised $1.4 billion. $1.4 billion, and they can't talk about what they do. I said, why not? He said, let's put it this way. I am the only employee who's not from the NSA or the CIA. Right? So that's when you can afford to be secretive, but otherwise, no. Okay, my point is socialize your idea. You'll get good feedback, you'll get good input. And then finally, be confident, as I said initially, but also be humble. Because when investors are looking at you, evaluating you, they're looking to make sure that you're a person whom they can work with. You're a person who can be flexible. You're a person who can be flexible enough that others they bring on board can work with, because no company ever became successful with just a couple of people running it. So that humility goes a long way. And with that, I am done. Questions?
Hubert, can you
All
put up
right, awesome.
Hubert, can you put up your slide which had all the 14 points?
Sure.
Because that so overall outline, and if people have questions, we can take that.
Bear with me 1 second here, brother.
No problem.
I think I shared one that was the last slide in the chat. Is that the one you're referring to?
I'm referring
No,
to
it's okay.
the
I'm pulling it up. I'm pulling it up.
yeah, which had all the
It's the
14
outline.
steps.
What you started with, outline of the business plan.
Yeah, thank
Can
you.
you see my? Yeah.
Yeah.
What? Can you see it? Or we got a.
Oh, you went to the end
It
again.
came in. Yeah,
There
back.
you go.
Thank you. Thank you. That's right there.
Oops. You went
Oh,
back.
no, not. Yeah,
Nope.
go back. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
Any questions for Hubert? The main
Yes.
purpose of this session was to, oh, sorry, Marcus had a question?
Yes, for
Go ahead,
the
Marcus.
final, yes, sir. For the final presentation, is the uh, roadmap of that presentation this here, these 14 items? Is this how we're going to follow for our final competition presentation?
Yeah, very good question. You will be getting in the next, 3-4 days, what will be the judging criteria. So I'll give you a quick outline, and I'm talking to judges, and then essentially coming up with a way, on how we will, your presentation will be evaluated. It will have many components of this, and so this is a good set to be looking at, but not necessarily, as Hubert pointed out, this is quite comprehensive at the place where you are. Some of them may be more important than others. And so we will certainly let you know of that.
There's one, if I may jump in here, there's one thing gearing up for a competition. And the other, but my understanding also is that there are some of you who are more evolved than that actually might be going out into the real world to raise some funding. So, this would be a more comprehensive format or exhaustive format you'd want to follow. But just one thing about competitions. In a competition, in my experience, it's not just your content, but the enthusiasm and the humor of presenting that goes a long way. I've seen, Ravi and I, we are always judges for the rice business plan competition, which touts itself as one of the biggest in the world. And sometimes, very often, the companies that win are not companies that are very investable for us. They're companies that actually told a great story and put on a great show. Okay, so there's a little bit of trade-off you have to think about there.
I think to your point, to your point, Hubert, for one, you had another slide that had those brackets on it where you said, you can use, here's the most critical ones and the ones that you could, it might be better to show that one. But to your point on competitions, absolutely. Most of people are looking for that. Oh, yeah, there you go. So most people might be looking for, most people who are judging at a competition get impressed by the passion. I think passion is a big word. If you're passionate about what you do, it comes out. If you have a good story to tell, it comes out. Whether if it's a big money maker, sometimes gets superseded by the passion itself, or the cause, if you may. So,
for the benefit of the audience, let me just say, Hubert mentioned this, and then Zafar and Ravi, and probably Willie also, have all been judges in competitions. Some of them much more closer in the rice competition and others in other competitions. So ours will not be too far away from some of those in terms of the criteria that is used. So the advice that they had given is very well taken. The enthusiasm, it's always about, how, passionate you feel, how convincing you are. And, that goes a long way in terms of what, your presentation. Now, the whole purpose of today's one is we will soon break into individual breakout rooms, and you will have some of these, mentors. We will be available asking questions about your particular project. Feel free to share where you are, what is it that you are, challenged with, how do you present it, how can it be more convincing, however, whatever the question may be. this is a good time to really ask. And again, remember what Hubert said. Don't be too secretive just because, let us say in your breakout room, there is another team that is also there. Just because you share your ideas, it doesn't mean that they are going to be copying the same thing or otherwise. So just ask your questions and make it as interactive as possible. And I know they're all quite enthusiastic about helping you guys. So please leverage it to the utmost. Okay. I'll wait. Let us see if anybody has any questions in plenary right now.
All right. So let me also share the screen for the breakout sessions. I've already pre-assigned the teams. If you renamed yourself early on, I have kind of renamed you, and then I've got 5 mentor rooms. However, at this point, I see 4 mentors, with the exception of Zafar. Zafar, I didn't. If you'd like to help us, I'm happy to assign you a room, sir. And
I'm
then
here
we
to
could
help.
also.
That's the reason why I'm here.
I love it. Thank you. I would go ahead and assign you, and then also. And also, I think I have one person that I'm not sure. Person named Nuvan. I'm not sure if that individual is part of a team.
Robbie,
If so,
I just sent you a message about Nawan. Robbie?
is Nuwan part of your team, T4?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, then we will go ahead and give him that name. And T4, you'll end up with mentor 2. So, in fact, at this point, I could, I do have the assignments put in place. Zafar, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna request that that you take my place as mentor 1, and you and I both will tag team this together. Is that fair?
No worries.
Excellent. Thank you so
How
much.
do I?
So
I need to go to. Where do I need to go? Anyway, then I will figure it out.
So what will happen is, as soon as I open the rooms, you will be automatically reassigned. So Hubert, you will have mentor room 2, and then the teams team
Ravi,
4, team 5.
do you mind changing my name there from Hubert to?
Come on, I thought humor was part of
it
it.
didn't say hubris.
I will have that fixed. All right, so the rooms will open, but what we want to do is
go off, Ravi, before everybody goes off, how long will they be in the rooms? Because we would like to come back into plenary and then see if there were some common themes that came out that we can, help with additionally later on. So should we just say it is right now 4:40? So should we just say 45 minutes and then come back? That way we can utilize the last couple of minutes in open session.
What are we expected to do in these sessions?
Great question. So I do have that, Radhaji and Hubert. So let me go ahead and tell you what you're expected to do there, right? So you'll see on my slide, our friends from, okay. So what we would like to do is give each team at least 5 minutes to kind of make their pitch to the mentor, kick that off. And then for the mentor to take 5 minutes per team to have that discussion with them. And then at the end, what would be nice is if a team could have a 1-minute elevator pitch. So 5 minutes for introduction for their team idea and project, 5 minutes for the Q&A, and then 1 minute per team. The way we've assigned this right now, it should be about 30 minutes per session. And then we'll bring everybody back, and then I'll reassign the teams to a new mentor, and you'll repeat that process for another 30 minutes. And that way you'll end up with about 1 hour of breakout sessions with at least 2 mentors for today.
My math says we need minimum at least 33 minutes, right?
Yeah. So for some of them, the pitch presentation, they may not be ready. Okay. But you're right. At least 33 minutes per session. And what I'll do is you'll get an alert 60 seconds before a breakout room is closed. And then we just have somebody who joined in. Let me make sure I understand.
Ravi,
Venkatesh?
I have a question. So
Yes,
for
sir.
the same team members, they should be in the same break room, right?
Yes, they will. All the team members who are in the same group will end up in the same
So
breakout.
in that case, could you please make a correction? My team member right now T7. I'm in I'm T14. My T7 Pranji is also my team member, so we should have the same number, right?
Absolutely. So you're with lithium or liquidium?
No, superconductor levitation.
Yeah, Ravi, there is a little challenge in that. Pranjal Sheth, who is now in Team 7, he also is in Dr. Ren's team. So he is dual-hatted. So if you can figure out a way in which both those teams, liquidium and the superconducting one, are all in the same room, that way Pranjal doesn't have to be in two separate rooms. If you can do that. Flip-flop.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yeah, I have already renamed Pranjal, and I am putting him in Mentor 2. So, folks, I'll go ahead and get this started. This way, whoever's left over, I'll still hang around to help them move. So here we go. Let's get this going. All right, welcome back, folks. Our first 30 minutes are over.
Ravi, this is Willie. I'm going to have to leave in the next 5 minutes.
Okay, so we will make it work.
Oh, we are back to the same.
Okay, is everybody back? Yep, it looks like everybody's back. Welcome back, folks. All right, so for this second 30 minutes, we will only move the mentors. So all the teams are still assigned to the same room. We're just going to change the mentor number. And this way, you'll have new mentors, an opportunity to do another 30 minutes. So, by the way, just quick feedback. Mentors, are these teams working on something cool?
Yep.
So I'm looking at Zafar, Willie.
Yep. Both teams I've mentored have good ideas. One is a little bit more theoretical than the other one, but they have nice potentials.
Yeah, I think the same. I would second that comment. I think, but there's work that needs to be done in terms of defining, paths to market, channel to market benefit. Focus on your segment. A lot of those things need to be defined. On some side, really, the operational side needs to be defined as to not only going to market, but how is the end user going to use this stuff, or deploy it, or install it, what have you. Most of these are hard tech things, which is good, which actually in my mind is exciting, great ideas, but it's to operationalize the thing, or at least to come up with a value proposition that takes into account both the investment side and the revenue side is really important.
Yep. Agree.
Awesome. Hubert, any thoughts?
I had 4 companies in my group. I think some of them are definitely, they were all the way from concept almost to, needing to get to almost a prototype to some of them are actually commercial at this point, right? So I think some of them are definitely maturer and ready for something, some need a little more mentoring than others in terms of thinking through target markets, going back to something that Radha and you and I talked about initially, which is not is socializing the opportunity a little better rather than just holding things too close in. Right. It's one thing, as I said, during my presentation, it's one thing holding things in really close if you think competition is going to steal your idea, quickly. Another thing, taking that technology and socializing so that you have better input, guidance, feedback, opportunities, all of the above. Right. So.
Awesome. Is it possible to get maybe 1 or 2 teams to share anything that they've learned in that last 30 minutes with that mentor? feel free to raise your hand or unmute and speak away. If you've not learned anything, that's okay. At least
I can try.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. So I prefer explain what I learned from my mentor, basically Ravi. I got some we got some good comments from Ravi. So why is we really need to think about who will be our customers. We need to know our potential customers, and we also need to do some investigation about our competitors and what could be our unique advantages over our competitors, and we also need to know how to charge customers. Yeah, maybe that's some good comments I can remember at this.
But that's all good, because that's the reason you are here in this program.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Maybe I can say some what I learned from this session. I learned basically we need to have a risk kind of mitigation plan. What the risk to the customer and how we can convince that this risk will not make a big problems, and also the investor will not lose this profit. So I think that's what I learned from mentor. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So we're at about 5:30. We're getting close to 5:30. Let's take the last 30 minutes here. I think we mentioned we want to try to wrap up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reopen the breakout rooms. The mentors have been reassigned, so you should find new mentors. Seems you'll end up in the same mentor room that you were assigned formally. So here it goes. All the rooms are open. All the best. We'll see you in 30 minutes.
We don't have people back, but to answer your question, Bharat, I will make sure that I get copies of the slides and then send them off to all of you later today, okay? So that you have the benefit of that.
Okay, sure, Professor. Thank you.
Yeah. I think we are waiting for, how was your first set of sessions with the first mentor? Was it helpful?
Yeah, it was very helpful, Dr. Ada. We learned a lot from the first mentor.
From the first mentor, okay. I'm really glad. So I'm still waiting for others to come in, and I don't know. Participant has enabled closed caption. This is transcript recordings. I don't know why. What happened to the rest of the people? We're supposed to be out at 6. At 6:01. So Prince, the Sail the Seas is signed up at 11 o'clock. Oh, they're all coming back, no? Mentor 2. I don't know whether they're coming back. All breakout, oh, they're going to close all the breakout rooms in 47 seconds. Okay. They're all popping back up again. Okay.
Yeah, Radha, I have to leave in a little bit. So, but we had a good session. I gave everyone my contact information too. Let me know what you all need.
Okay. Hubert is here. Ravi is back. I still don't. Oh, Ravi is still. I don't know whether Ravi is coming back. He should be.
He might be in another session.
Yeah, I think he's probably with his group.
Yeah.
And they're slowly coming in now.
Okay. There he is. Okay.
He's here.
Ah, there is Ravi. Okay.
Hey, so yes.
Ravi, looks like you were able to get most of your people back again.
So Ravi, you abandoned me, man. You didn't show up on my sessions.
Yeah. So if you want to go through the same process for a couple of minutes, Ravi, like you did before, feedback from the mentors and feedback from the people.
Absolutely. So I'd love for it, I'm gonna give it to Hubert. Hubert, was there anything new or interesting you found on the second round? Any other additional feedbacks than the ones you've given? Followed by Zafarji.
So there was only one company in my group, and I got a very good lecture on appreciating the value of mushrooms.
Appreciating the value of what?
Newfound respect for mushrooms and the opportunity for mushrooms. And but I'll tell you something. I think the opportunity for maybe some improvement, let's call it that, at U of H, to be able to provide resources to faculty to commercialize technologies might be there, because as I was told, and we all know this, professors have other priorities, right? And the priorities being publish or perish, and mentor their PhD students and things like that. And when you're young, that's the time you tend to be innovative most in your thinking, but that innovation doesn't have the right incentives or the right impetus or support as yet. Universities have to kind of move down that path to take those things and be able to match them with people who might be interested in taking and running with that technology to commercialize. So I won't go into the specifics over here, but
that's awesome. All right, Zafar, you're up.
Yeah, so I think we had a great session. Again, I mean, people are at different stages. I kind of spend a little bit of time in being able to understand what's needed versus what's wanted, want versus need, because, you may think you have a great idea and people love it, but if I can make do with something simple, I may not want it, right? Want is something that you have to have. So both the teams I were talking to, there's some regulatory aspects, there's some integration aspects, there's some market aspects to make sure that that market is fully understood and the channel in the market is fully understood. And then the operability part of those things is very, very important, because a lot of my sessions were really more on both hard tech and soft, but especially on the hard tech side, the operability is very important. On the soft tech side, you got to be able to justify the quote unquote license. Why would somebody want it? And then what they are willing to pay for it. And so we had an interesting discussion on valuing something, but the time's too short on the valuation part. But that's a discussion that can also be had. So to Hubert's point, the last spring, for the first time, I taught a technology commercialization course, my first time as well, but at the business school. But I only had business folks in there. I wish I had some technology folks, but that's a whole another discussion. So
awesome.
Anyway.
So if I may, let me quickly share, my suggestion for the teams. I put 2 links in the chat. The second one is the right one. The first one goes to the same speaker. He's actually a good friend of mine, who's a storyteller. And the storyteller has this baker's dozen, which is actually 13 slides. And he does it because now you remember baker's dozen, it should be 12. He's got 13. What is he selling extra? And all of a sudden his pitch is very interesting. There's a lot of good tips that he has that I recommend for the teams that I've heard so far. Because again, all of you are so passionate about what you've got. You forget to, that sometimes we need to story tell some of our inventions, but then obviously we need to, tie it back to timeline. Some of our ideas are fantastic, but if we don't do anything about it, it's a 60-year later idea. We need to give ourselves some, within 1 year, this is what the alpha like. Instead of just saying, here's the invention, looking for a market, can some of you go to a market, say, this is the gap in the market that my invention solves, and within 6 months or a year or 3, this is what the monetary or what the money looks like. How much we need, how much can we make, kind of. So I'd encourage you to kind of look at that. I hope you prepare for your next pitch presentation And let's get the fourth mentor, Radhaji. Would you like to share any? If after you, I'll just mention TiE University a little bit, an opportunity for these teams, in addition to your own competition that you're doing in September. So I'll pass it to you, and then I'll end with TiE. Yeah.
I would first like to thank all the members of the TiE group who are here to really help us. And then thanks for taking the time, Hubert, for you to make the presentation, and all of you, including Zafar, to really just mentor. Even though these were short sessions, I'm sure they really value what you have told them. For the rest of the teams, I just want to make sure that just to say before I go on, I see that Dr. Balan has his hand raised.
No, I didn't raise my hand.
Oh, there is a hand. Oh, that hand moves. So, okay. So that's not yours. All right. Thanks. We have these one-on-one sessions. Many of you have already signed up for tomorrow, as well as on the 7th, I believe. We will be there. Bring in whatever you had. And there is also sessions where you have a chance to share what you have done and ask any questions. And I will also try and then give you feedback on what I can help you with. Okay. So we will do that. Once again, thanks to the TiE group. I'll hand it over back to Ravi. You may want to say a little bit about the TiE and also the competitions that are coming, because the one on September 8th is not the end of the story. We are going to be continuing working with you, trying to see how you can indeed commercialize your ideas. Go ahead, Ravi.
Thank you, Radhaji. So, folks, so you have a competition that's going to be a fantastic practice, local. You're going to have some local judges from large corporates, but I understand it's going to be kind of local. So the TiE ecosystem, as Hubert shared earlier, it's a global ecosystem. It's it's entrepreneurs teaching entrepreneurship to aspiring entrepreneurs, right? Where not everybody on our group is a faculty, but they all certainly have the experience to teach these things. So what I'm sharing with you on the screen, the website is in the chat. It's tieuniversity.org. It's not an actual school. It's an initiative of TiE Global, where we host every year a hackathon, a global hackathon, followed by a global pitch competition, followed by an investor demo day. The global hackathon will be announced soon, that it's going to take place in November of this year. Our global pitch competition usually happens around April or May of the following year. So in this case, it'll be the season 2024. That's going to be coming up. And then our investor demo days usually happens either in the summer or in the fall, depending on how many teams are ready. So just to put into perspective, our global hackathon will give away about $30,000 of cash prizes to students that take part in our customers' challenges. So our customers are large corporates who say, we want a solution from all these smart kids around the school world. Here's our problem. Can you solve it in 24 hours? And the best idea gets an internship plus some cash funding. The global pitch competition is usually $100,000 or $150,000 competition pool that takes in about 1,400 student teams around the world. All of them are given a free boot camp. All of them go through a local round, and then the top teams make it into a global finals, typically in Silicon Valley, where during the TiECon, which is our large conference for entrepreneurs, they're invited to pitch for the global finals round. The teams that go through the Global Pitch Fest, they're also given access to investors across the ecosystem. The typical investments are about $1 million to $2 million in raise, and about 7 teams per year are selected or invested into by global VCs in the TiE ecosystem. So this is really an opportunity for you to use some of the local mentors that are available to you. Take part in these competitions. They cost you absolutely nothing. They all come with one critical service, which is the unlimited mentoring from TiE and TiE charter members. Our charter members are all successful, busy people, but they're all committing to offer mentoring to student teams in the cities or chapters they serve. So leverage this opportunity. And if I'm in your shoes, I would focus all my energy on that September competition that Dr. Radha is running, and then what you learn out of there, bring it to TiE University in the April timeframe with a mentor, looking for some actual investment dollars, and leverage this opportunity. There's one more competition that I think y'all ought to work on, which is the Rice's business plan competition that takes place in every May. A lot of the TiE teams go to Rice business plan competition, and then vice versa. A lot of those Rice business plan competition comes back and competes in TiE as well. It's not necessarily about the money that you win, but it is the network that you build, the entrepreneurs that you're surrounding yourselves around as you aspire to be entrepreneurs yourselves. So I hope this was helpful. I've shared the link in the chat. I will certainly ask Hubert to share his LinkedIn in the chat so folks can find you, and or maybe your email address or phone number, in the chat as we kind of wrap up our session. I'll request the same from Ms. Zafar. Zafar, if you could do the same and share how can folks get in touch with you. And then I'm sharing my LinkedIn as well. And Willie's LinkedIn. Willie, who was here with us earlier, he is a fantastic individual, probably has 3 PhDs, so speaks 7 languages. I've put his contact information in the chat. So reach out to us as you build this further. Thank you so much, Radhaji, for the opportunity to be inspired by all the great that U of H has to offer. Excited for these innovations. Excited.
Yeah. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you very, very much. And thanks to Zafar and all the TiE people. Most importantly, thanks to all the team members for attending. Hope this was helpful to you. We will continue. We want you to be very successful in every way we can help. That's what we are trying to. The competition is only one milestone. And after that, we would like to really see you go further, enter other competitions, finally make your own business. That way you are a successful entrepreneur. Okay. Hubert, I had a quick request. Is it okay if I shared all your slides with the—
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, with
and
all
I've
the
posted my email in the chat as well.
Okay. So I will go ahead and then send it out to them. You had sent me a copy earlier, so I will, send it off. Unless you have a version that is revised, send me a revised version.
So let me do that. I'll send you I'll send you one later on today. Okay.
Okay. Thank you all. I know. Thanks for staying around till 6 o'clock and a little bit beyond. Thank you very, very much. Okay. We'll see you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.